but I'll just quickly introduce Aly. Aly used to work for Simon and Schuster as an editor. Aly's been in publishing for 2 decades.
More than, yeah.
More than 2 decades, both in trade and indie. And there are so many things that I know Aly could talk on as an expert when it comes to publishing. And today, we're going to focus on getting your brain straight and cultivating a success mindset. So of all the things, this is what we decided to talk on because it is actually that important to our book success. So we're going to talk about Aly's #1 key to having an enjoyable author experience and how getting your brain on straight can make or break the success of your book. And Aly, I'll let you expand on your introduction and just dive in.
Awesome. Well, let me, actually, Jess, if you could let me share my screen, I can put the slideshow up for us.
Right. And by the way, if anyone is unmuted, please mute now. Aly, I will make you a host. All right.
Cool. All right, share screen. There we go. Okay. All righty. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn my camera off here for just a moment. So you guys should see my opening slide. Is that right?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, so let's get started. Thank you, Jess, so much for inviting me to come speak with the Self-Pub Hub tribe. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm really happy that you guys are here and whoever's listening to this recording later, because I truly believe that your mindset can make or break the success of your book. And beyond that, it's the key to actually enjoying this whole journey that we call being an author. And you know, if you don't enjoy it, just like with anything else, you're probably not going to stick with it. And that would be a real shame, because I know you're all here today, and I know you're all here in this group because you believe you have something valuable to share with the world. And I want to help you do exactly that. I want you to take a minute and just think back in time. Think back to how you felt when you first started writing, as far back as you can, or maybe it was more recent for some of you. Everybody comes to this at a different point in their life. But think about how it felt when you first started writing, whether it's fiction, memoir, nonfiction, whatever it is you're working on for your book. Maybe you're like me, even as a little kid, maybe you loved reading, and maybe you started telling your own stories like pretty much as soon as you could talk, right? Maybe you were drawing them and then writing them, and maybe it was just a natural and fun thing you've always enjoyed. Or maybe it was more recent. Maybe you just somewhat recently, maybe because of the pandemic, maybe a little bit before that, maybe you just had this idea in your head and you just couldn't shake it. And then maybe one day you thought, yeah, all right, let's try this. I got a good idea. Let's try to write a book, right? And at first it was probably just plain fun, right? Sharing your experiences, offering advice or instruction, telling stories, making your characters come to life, just writing. Creating is fun. But then, before long, reality crept in. You learned that the act of writing isn't enough. You need to learn the craft of writing a great book, right? It's not just about sitting down and specifically writing. There's a craft to writing a great book. And then there's revising. And then there's people telling you that you need to get outside opinions. And that can be scary. And some of those outside opinions might have been hurtful. And maybe you've even gotten far enough to learn something about what it takes to get a book deal or to successfully self-publish. Maybe you've learned a little about what an author platform is and the importance of things like mailing lists and all this other marketing stuff. And that can all start to make you feel pretty overwhelmed, frustrated, maybe even depressed or a little hopeless, to be honest. All that information just starts to weigh you down, and it can make you feel like giving up. And here's the thing. No matter what else happens, one thing I promise you is guaranteed, and that's the fact that you cannot succeed if you quit. And mastering your mindset is absolutely crucial to be able to go the distance and play the long game that is book writing and publishing success. So today, I want to help you get your brain on straight and get some control over your mindset so that you can do that, so that you can stay with it and you can succeed. So before we get too deep into all of this, I want to give you a little bit of background on who I am and where my experience comes from. Jess introduced a little bit of it. Yes, I have been working in book publishing for more than 20 years now, which seems insane to me every time I say it out loud. I started out at a teeny tiny regional publisher in upstate New York, and then I was fortunate enough to get a job at Simon & Schuster, which, as many of you probably know, is considered one of the big 5 New York City publishers. And I acquired it and edited both fiction and nonfiction books there. And why I went freelance is a story for another time, but that's what I did. And ever since, I've been a full-time freelance editor, writer, and publishing consultant. And you guys, I love my job. I do. I super love it. I've ghostwritten best-selling books. I've worked with hundreds of authors on various levels, and I am so proud to lead my team at the Writers Ally in helping serious authors to write, publish, and sell more high-quality books. And today, I'm going to bring all of this experience to bear in helping you understand just how important your mindset is to the success of your book, and to bring your attention to a few really common ways that having the wrong mindset can kill your author career, or at the very least, make it harder and more painful than it needs to be. I'm going to give you some tips for how to shift out of that to make it better. Okay, so I used this phrase earlier, getting your brain on straight. That's the title of this talk, and it's a phrase I use a lot. For today's purposes, what I'm really talking about is how to embrace the gap, this metaphorical chasm between what you expect to happen and what is realistically likely to happen. And to me, when I say getting your brain on straight, it really just means that you're thinking about this gap in an effective or productive or helpful way, instead of just letting it stop you in your tracks or make you give up. Because when you can dance in this space without plummeting to your metaphorical death down below, you can be both informed and realistic. But you can also enjoy yourself and have fun and dream big. And, in my not so humble opinion, that is one of the most important pieces of mindset work that any author needs to do. Because really, what could be more important than being able to enjoy yourself and have fun and dream big and still be informed and realistic all at the same time? Now, some people will say that a good way to think about life in general, and certainly any kind of special effort like writing and publishing a book, is that you should expect the worst and hope for the best, right? You've all probably heard someone say that at some point in your life. Expect the worst and hope for the best. Now, yes, that is a way of looking at the reality gap, but I don't feel that it's quite right. So I say you don't expect the worst and hope for the best. You simply keep your expectations in alignment with reality. So there's this whole field of scientific experiments that all derive from one really famous experiment from the 1950s called the forced swim test. It's pretty fascinating stuff, but I'm just going to touch on the high level takeaway here. So in a number of these offshoot experiments, researchers identified that human subjects who were put into a situation where the game was rigged essentially just got very depressed and gave up. But as soon as the researchers showed the subjects that the game was rigged, so as soon as they knew and understood that the game was rigged, interestingly, all of their symptoms of being depressed completely went away. Now, there were other similar experiments also done along these same lines where the subject knew, for example, that eventually they would receive help. When that happened, when the subject who was trying to swim was told that they eventually would receive help, they were able to hang in there with the test for many multiples of time longer than the subjects who were not told that help was coming. So I'm really oversimplifying. Like I said, it's a mass industry of information and studies all around this basic forced swim test idea. But the point that I want to get across here is that human psychology works such that simply knowing the reality of the landscape or of their situation allowed the test subjects to be okay with that reality. So imagine you are the subject. Let's say you're just getting started with your business and you've decided to write a nonfiction book as a way to attract clients. This is an approach that has certainly worked for many people. There's no reason it can't work for you. Or if you're writing fiction or memoir, let's say this is your first book. And let's say you came into this thing writing a book. You didn't previously have anything to do with writing in your professional life, right? So you don't have an existing mailing list or any kind of audience. And, while we all, adults in this country, at least mostly know how to write, the basic act of writing, maybe you haven't done anything at the professional level as far as writing, okay? So here you are, you're this test subject. So what is the common expectation? And what is the reality that you need to become aware of so that you can be okay with it. In other words, where is the gap that we need to bridge here? Now, if you're just getting started in your business and in your field, you may have a more difficult time writing the book than someone who's been in your business for a decade or more. You're probably going to have less experience to draw from. You're going to have fewer client stories or case studies to illustrate and support your ideas. And you're going to have a shorter, possibly even a non-existent resume, and therefore a lack of credibility. Now, there are ways to make up for some of this, but if you get into the process believing that you're going to sit down and write your book in a weekend and it'll attract all these great clients for you and it's going to be amazing because your favorite business guru told you that he did the same thing, well, you're in for a rude awakening, frankly. That guru was able to write a decent draft in a weekend because he had a decade plus of experience to draw on. It was all there in his head just waiting to be drawn out. But that isn't you. Now, the situation is very similar for a brand new novelist or a memoirist, right? A lot of people mistakenly believe that just because they've been writing their whole lives, that all they need is a good idea and they already have whatever they need to write a book. But most of you who are here today listening to this recording, you probably already know that isn't the case, right? So again, if you're sitting down to write a book-length narrative for the first time in your life, you're going to have a harder time of it than someone who's already written, say, 3 books already. You may not fully understand how to structure an effective narrative or what the particular story elements of your chosen genre or category require. You may not know what it means, how important it is to start a story, to figure out where the story begins, what the climax is, where it should happen, what the ending should be, how to wrap that up, right? You may have a lot of great ideas, but maybe you're still learning how to write descriptive sentences or strong dialogue. So the gap in this scenario is how long it'll take you to write a book, let alone a good book when you're new at this, right? What's realistic? How much research you'll need to make up for your lack of experience. So again, if you come into this having never written a book before, not having an MFA in creative writing, not having professional writing experience, or trying to create a book that's going to be an asset for your business when you've just started that business and you haven't really been working with clients yet, or you don't have an audience, you're going to do some research to make up for that lack of experience. You might even need to pause the project while you work with some people in the real world to field test your ideas first. Maybe trying some things out with clients if you're working on a nonfiction book, or getting some alpha readers if you're writing fiction or memoir. In other words, if you start with the mindset that writing a great book will be fast and easy, you're going to really suffer when that isn't the case. But if I tell you here and now that it will more likely take you at least a few months and possibly quite a bit longer, maybe even a few years, if you're really, really just getting started, to learn how to write a really good book. Now, you might not love that fact, but if you know going into it that that's the expectation, that's what's typical, you can be okay with it. It just isn't going to feel so torturous because you know that's just how it works for most people. Now, let's say you get over those hurdles and finally finish writing the book. Well, now you have publishing hurdles to clear and all these ideas around what should happen or what's supposed to happen. But remember, you're brand new to all of this. So you have no mailing list, no audience or client base. You have a network of colleagues or other authors maybe, but it's small. And you probably don't have any income or very little income from your business or your books yet. Now, when you're starting from this place, as far as the publishing piece goes, right? The book's already written. Now we're thinking about how to get it published. Well, when you're starting from this kind of ground zero place, it's very unlikely that your book is going to sell a lot of copies right out of the gate, especially not enough to earn a bestseller ranking. Now, when you hear stories of people launching books and immediately hitting bestseller lists, very often those authors are not brand new. Very often they already have an audience, maybe through previous books or business of some kind, or else they have a very strong partner network to tap into to help them promote the book. And yes, absolutely, it does happen. There are always exceptions. Very rarely a total nobody and a total beginner can hit a huge bestseller list and get really, really lucky. But for most authors, that is simply not the reality. So if you have this idea that the only measure of your success is whether or not you hit a bestseller list and how fast you get there, you're just setting yourself up to be disappointed. And worse, you might quit when you don't achieve this measure. But the reality for a person in this situation doesn't have to be sad. I've known authors whose books have sold millions of copies over the course of several years and that keep on selling year after year, making great income, and they never once hit a bestseller list. And then there are the authors who don't even try to sell books. They just give them away constantly because the opportunities the book brings them are so lucrative that it's never even about the book sales. Usually it's nonfiction folks, and I'm talking about things like speaking engagements, high-level consulting, bigger and better clients, etc. If you don't have the right mindset, if you look to unrealistic achievements as the only measure of your success, then the first time you fail to hit that expectation, you're going to quit. You're going to decide all these negative things about you and your book that probably are not true. It's your mindset that will help you to weather this emotional storm and bridge that reality gap. And it can be really hard to bridge that gap if you don't know what is realistic in the first place. So I want to share some numbers and statistics with you to paint the real picture of the book publishing landscape. Now, I'm going to warn you in advance, just learning this information is a mindset exercise in and of itself. And you have a choice to make right now. You can hear it and allow it to overwhelm and discourage you, making you quit before you even really get started. Or you can take it as just facts and context. It's just information that can help you understand what it'll take to navigate through this reality to get where you want to go. In other words, information that will help you make effective plans. So, first of all, let's talk about the sheer volume of books that are out there in the world, right? Now, there's a company called Bowker. Some of you may have heard of it before. It's a support company for the publishing industry. And over time, Bowker has reported that approximately 350,000 titles from established publishers are being published every year for the last few years. And that number's been slowly creeping up each year, but we're still roughly in that range. Now, the best estimates, the most optimistic estimates, will say that approximately 1 in every 100 manuscripts submitted actually get published. That means approximately 35 million manuscripts are rejected every single year. So if you're considering traditional publishing, I want you to really let that sink in. More than 35 million manuscripts and proposals are rejected every single year. Now, a lot of you guys are probably leaning towards self-publishing. This is a self-pub hub after all. But let me tell you, self-publishers don't have it much easier. Figures vary anywhere between 1 million to 4 million books self-published each year in the last few years. And that doesn't even include the books that don't have ISBNs. As many of you might know, when you publish an ebook directly to the Kindle platform on Amazon, they don't require you to have an ISBN. Bowker can only track the number of titles based on ISBN. So any book that is a public domain book, any book that is an ebook only that doesn't use an ISBN isn't even being counted in that 1 million to 4 million new books self-published every year. Add to all of this the number of books that are already out there, and you have an incredibly busy, noisy market. And as an author, it's your job to stand out in that busy, noisy market. So that means a few things right off the bat, right? First of all, competition is unbelievably stiff all around, no matter how you're publishing. Competition for readers' attention and dollars is unbelievably stiff. So if you want to succeed, you have to be all in, and you have to be willing to make the investment of time, energy, and yeah, money too. It also means you must do your research and make a plan or work with an expert to help you create one, because the odds are stacked highly against you. And again, getting lucky isn't something you can plan for or count on. And perhaps more than anything, it means that while you absolutely can find success with your book, it's not going to be easy. You must be in this for the long haul. If you know and accept that upfront, you will have a way easier and happier publishing journey. Now, I want to briefly address 5 of the most common and, in my opinion, harmful misconceptions that I come across with newer authors that can really affect your success mindset. The first is this idea that you can do everything yourself, right? There's this very independent, very strong kind of attitude or kind of trend, especially among self-publishing authors, which on the one hand is super awesome, right? It's a wonderful thing that digital technology has evolved to the point where it really, truly is a viable option to self-publish and produce a book. So yeah, you can do everything yourself, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that it's very unlikely you'll find success if you do. There was a study, it's really quite old at this point. Unfortunately, there haven't been a lot more recently produced, but there was this study by a company called Taylost. You can actually find it published on Amazon. I believe the title is called Not a Gold Rush. In any case, Taylost did this survey of a few thousand self-publishing authors, and they found some really interesting data. One thing that they found was that the authors who got help with professionals earned 34% more than those who tried to do everything themselves. They also found out that most indie books earn $500 per year or less. And the people who earn more than that, the people that they earmarked as top earners in the self-publishing space, none of them try to do everything themselves. They all hire professionals at some level at some point. So there's a really important alignment between what you put into your book and your publishing process and what you expect to get out of it. Second misconception that I think is very damaging for a lot of indie authors is this idea that self-publishing is faster and easier than traditional publishing, and that's like the reason to do it, right? Traditional publishing takes forever. You have to get an agent, and then the agent sells it to a publisher, and then it takes the publisher a couple of years to get it into the catalog, and blah, blah, blah. 100% true. Self-publishing absolutely is faster and easier than traditional publishing. But there's a hidden pitfall in this belief, which is what I call the impatience problem, right? The fact is, you just don't know what you don't know. So sure, it's very easy to take your Word document, turn it into a PDF, run it through some software, maybe even use a free template online somewhere, make your own cover, and just throw it all up on Amazon. You absolutely can do that. And you can do that in really a couple of hours. But that doesn't get you a book that sells. Third most common misconception I think is very harmful to your mindset is this idea that, well, I'll do it on the cheap now and I'll sell a whole lot of books and then I'll reinvest that money in my next few books, right? But here's the thing. You will never see that money. You must invest if you want to see a return on your investment. If you put out a bunch of books that are subpar, what's going to happen is you're going to get bad reviews. You're not going to get any sales. Bad reviews will be from the few sales that you get or the copies that you give away, right? And they're going to make it even harder for anybody else to want to take a chance on the book if you get bad reviews. So the chances of you putting out something quick and dirty, in most cases, and that you're going to make money from that somehow and then put out a better quality product later, that just doesn't make any sense. That's just not how business works. The next most common and harmful misconception I hear a lot with new authors is this whole, if you write a great book, readers will find it, right? All I have to do is just focus on my craft. I just have to write a really great book. Nothing else really matters. That whole, if you build it, they will come, right? Field of Dreams. That stuff's only true in the movies, you guys. Marketing and platform matters a lot. Great books that sell themselves, that doesn't really start to happen until you've reached a critical mass of exposure. There's one popular theory that's floated around for a long time. They say if you can get about 10,000 books in a year out into the world and into the hands of readers, if roughly 10,000 people in the first year of your book are reading your book, then it starts to build a certain kind of groundswell, that you start to get that kind of viral, viral movement where people are recommending the book to their friends and it's just sort of popping up everywhere. But you still have to get to that point before that happens, right? So the idea that you can just write a great book and nothing else matters, absolutely not true. And last but not least, it's another version of the idea of investing later after you earn some money, is the idea that you invest so much into your first book that you then get really panicky and sort of hell-bent on making all that money back. Except in reality, one book is very unlikely to do well enough that it sets you up for life. Probably. Again, there are always some exceptions, but you can't plan to be an exception, right? So as far as planning purposes and mindset purposes, you should know it often takes several books, anecdotally, usually about 3 or 4, before you start to see serious traction. And as I alluded to earlier, for a lot of nonfiction authors, the real income to be made isn't even actually from book sales alone. It's from the opportunities the book brought them. So again, imagine that you believe you're supposed to make all of your investment back with your first book. How are you going to feel when you don't? Now compare that to now knowing, here I am. I'm a professional with more than 20 years of experience. I've worked with hundreds of authors. Now you know it is highly unlikely you're going to make that money back from book sales alone on just one book. Does that maybe make you a little more motivated to start writing your second or third book? I hope it does. So here's the secret trick that all the biggest and best mindset experts teach, even though they may call it different things and approach it in different ways. And you've already heard me do it a few times today. I'm talking about reframing. Now, the clinical definition is cognitive reframing. It's a technique that's used to shift your mindset so you're able to look at a situation, a person, or a relationship from a slightly different perspective. Now, facts are facts and reality is reality, but how you perceive that reality, how you interpret and respond to those facts is a choice. And where we have choices, we are empowered. Humans are always happier when we feel empowered, when we feel we have some control. And you can always, always control your choices. So I invite you to really ask yourself, what will you choose? Will you choose to believe that the odds are so stacked against you that you have no chance of ever finding any kind of success with your book and therefore it's not even worth your time or energy to try? Will you choose to believe that you are the rare exception, that you will get astronomically lucky and become an overnight success with hardly any effort on your part? Or will you choose to believe that you are fully capable of success and you will find it if you educate yourself on how to best achieve your goals, make a plan, and then put in the effort to execute it? All you have to do is choose. The real magic of mindset is that it is always your choice. You are always in control. So, how do we reframe when it matters most? How do we actually do this so that we can keep trudging along in a profession that, frankly, by definition, includes a lot of loss, a lot of rejection, a lot of hard moments and truths? How do we use our mindset to help stay the course so that we can achieve the success that we dream of? So, the first thing about mindset and reframing is that it's a practice. It's not a one and done personality change. You never stop practicing improving your mindset. And again, it begins with a choice. So I invite you to make that choice right now. What fear or negative belief is nagging at you right now? Maybe it came up in your breakout sessions. Maybe it just came up now because of some of the statistics I shared. What are you thinking about your book, about your chances of publishing success? What negative belief is nagging at you right now that you can choose to reframe and see differently? And as you go along your journey to publication, I invite you to keep repeating to yourself as an ongoing practice, whenever it's appropriate, this is a choice and it's my choice to make. This is a choice and it's my choice to make. Rejections start piling up, get a couple of bad reviews. Well, it's your choice to see that as proof that you suck or valuable feedback you'll consider for next time. Or, yay, someone's reading my work. And you know what? There's no accounting for taste. You can't please everyone. You have an editor come back with really significant rewrite suggestions you weren't expecting? Well, you can choose to take that as proof that you don't have it in you to be a writer and you should just quit. Or you can embrace the process that every single writer on earth goes through, especially in the beginning, and learn from it. This is how you strengthen your skill set through a cycle of practice and feedback, refinement, practice and feedback, lather, rinse, repeat. Are your books not selling? Well, again, choice. Take that as proof that no one cares what you have to say, that you've embarrassed yourself and should just quit. Or choose to see it as an opportunity to dig in a little bit more, honestly assess what may have gone wrong, and experiment until you make it work better to sell more books. Every setback is an opportunity to learn, and learning helps you do it better next time. So here are the actual steps on how to shift your mindset. And as you can see, it's very simple, but I want to say up front and acknowledge it isn't always going to be easy. Changing your mindset may be one of the hardest things we all do. You think writing a book was hard? You think learning to write was hard? Shifting your mindset can be very, very challenging. But take ownership and make a choice. Be the captain of your ship, not a victim of chance. Approaching your writing and publishing efforts from this place already puts you ahead of the game. If you choose to see setbacks as information, not failures, you practice an experimental mindset so you don't quit as soon as things take a negative turn or if something you try doesn't work immediately. Now, honestly, I think it's one of the saddest things about this this whole thing we call becoming an author and writing a book is that most authors quit way too soon. They never give themselves or their books or their marketing tactics or whatever an honest chance, right? The first time something feels too hard, the first time something negative happens, their mindset, their negative mindset allows them to take that as proof of whatever insecurity it is they're struggling with, right? Instead of just information. Remember, you may not succeed immediately or easily, but if you quit, you definitely won't get there. That is the only sure thing. If you quit, you will not succeed. You have to be present to win. Not everything will work on the first try. Not every tactic works equally well for every author or book. You will likely have some flops. Expect this and embrace it as part of the process, not proof of something terrible about you or your book. Focus on your actions, not outcomes. Don't plan to get lucky. Focus on the things that you can control, your input, your actions. And you can measure your outcome based on on the successful completion of those things rather than outcomes you don't have any control over. It's just better for you emotionally and physically. And practically speaking, you'll accomplish more and see better results with this approach too. For example, instead of measuring the success of your book launch on whether or not you hit a bestseller list or bestseller ranking, or how many books you sell, none of which you can control, instead set a goal to send a certain number of books out to reviewers, or give away a certain number of books to readers, or pitch yourself as a guest to a certain number of podcasts, right? Focus on actions that you can control, not outcomes, which you can't control. Now, this last part doesn't mean ignore results, right? Results matter, but instead of taking them as evidence that you suck or that your book sucks, take it more neutrally as a sign that something isn't working and simply needs to be rethought, adjusted, or replaced with new actions. That's what I mean when I say an experimental mindset, right? Take ownership and choose, learn to see setbacks as information, and focus on your actions, not your outcomes. These are the steps to how to start shifting your mindset. So I want to offer you some tips to just go a little bit deeper with this to help you out. Backsliding is inevitable, right? You are literally working against millions of years of evolution and biology, right? There's this thing, you may have heard this term, the negative bias, right? The experts say that as human beings, we have a negative bias. Our brains are hardwired to focus on negative things because, back in the day when we're running from tigers and bears and oh my, it was important for us to see danger. It was important for us to see the negative things so that we could protect ourselves. Well, that's still happening, even though we don't live in that environment anymore, right? It's still how your brain works. So one great way to cultivate your success mindset is to use things that will help interrupt that knee-jerk reaction toward the negative bias. I like visual reminders. So things like sticky notes, inspirational posters, smartphone reminders. There are all kinds of fun little apps and things now where you can get custom-made positive messages pop up on your phone, or you can even create your own messages and your own reminders. There are apps that will let you do that. But some kind of visual reminder, something that hits you in the face, not literally, when something negative might be going on, when you start backsliding and your mindset starts to get away from you, something visual that you can look at that will, automatically help you right the ship, so to speak. You want to practice increasing your self-awareness so that you can better recognize when you need to pause and reframe instead of getting sucked down a vortex of doom and gloom, right? What can help with increasing your self-awareness? Things like a meditative practice, right? Meditation is probably one of the most well-known, most popular, and most effective practices for helping to improve your self-awareness. In a nutshell, when you meditate, you are training your brain to take notice of its own functioning, to take notice of itself so that you can better recognize when you need to pause. Also, there are timer apps, right? There are similar apps on your phone you can get that will ask you to check in with yourself and your feelings or thoughts. That's also a good way to train yourself to pause and take stock of where your head is at, quite literally. Have positive input handy. It's another really great trick. So similar idea to the visual reminders. Have a brag file of positive reviews, printed out in a folder that sits right on your desk, or that you keep on your phone, or that's just everywhere. Maybe you have endorsements from clients or other authors, nice things people have said about you, success stories from people that you've helped if you have clients. Or it could just be pure inspiration. If there are podcasts or books or video montages. I have one that I really love from YouTube that I learned about from a conference. I just find it so motivating. It's just like a 5-minute little clip. I keep it saved at the top of my browser, and anytime I'm feeling like I need a little quick reframing, a little quick boost of motivation, I watch it, and it works very well for me. Anything that you can turn to easily when it feels tough to keep going. You want to have that kind of stuff handy so that you can just tap into it and get that quick little boost, again, to help you get back on track mentally and emotionally. So that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope I've been able to open your eyes a bit to the ways that a success mindset can help you stay in the game and make success possible. And so I think we still have a few more minutes to take some questions. So let me stop my screen share here, turn my video back on. All right. And if anybody has some questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Wow, thank you so much, Aly. I feel like I was triggered 100% of the whole presentation because it just definitely, I've experienced all of that, all the negative thinking. I've quit. I quit about 5 years ago and just started again. So it was sort of all entirely intuitive, but just the way you said it, I don't know, it triggered something good as well in me. So thank you. And it looks like Linda has her hand up. So Linda, would you like to unmute?
Hi. You have your Facebook group, right? Rogers Alley?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I'm one of your members, Linda Berry.
Oh, wonderful. Hey, Linda, how you doing?
Good, good. I'm glad you did the presentation today. It was very, very informative. I had a question because you went through those stats kind of quick. You said 1 to 2 million self-published books a year, but not counting the ones on Amazon because there's no ISBN number, right?
So what you're referring to is the number of self-published books that are estimated that come out every year. And I've seen numbers estimating anywhere from 1 to 4 million.
Now, when it goes up to 4, are you counting the Amazon ones? Because a lot of going on there on Amazon.
No, that's the thing. Those statistics only include books that have ISBN numbers. So there's no way to account for how many books are being published on Amazon without ISBN numbers. Quite likely many more times that number. It's a lot of books.
And then you said, in the traditional published, there's 35 million rejected. Is that per year?
Per
35
year.
million?
Per
Wow.
year.
So
that's...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so it's an estimate based on the fact that we know about 350,000 books, new books, are being published by traditional publishers every year. So we're extrapolating from that. Again, it's not hard data, but if you estimate optimistically, if 1 in 100 submissions actually gets accepted and makes it onto the shelves, that math works out to about 35 million that are not making it onto the shelves, that are being rejected every year.
I have a question about the stats on how top earners, they got help. And that makes sense to me. I was wondering if you have stats or anecdotes on the specific processes that are most important if you had to cherry pick between writing, editing, distributing, production, marketing help, mindset help. What is the most important to invest in early?
Yeah, I mean, it is a very good question. I unfortunately can't give you a simple answer because I think it varies a lot for everybody. It depends a lot about, who you are, what kind of background you have, right? If you're somebody who maybe is lucky that has some natural talent as a writer, you have a natural strength in that area. Or maybe you have some experience. It might not be specifically novel writing experience, but maybe, for example, you are a professional copywriter or an advertising person or something like that. For you to learn the basics of how to write, how to construct a narrative, it's still going to be important, but the learning curve is going to be a little easier for you, right? Compared to somebody who maybe has loved to read and just thought they had an awesome idea, but they've never actually sat down before to try to write a novel. I can tell you from the studies and the surveys that I've read that generally they'll break it into sort of two main categories, which is editing and design, as two of the most fundamentally important areas to get help in. This is just my opinion. I think that would be true because those are two areas in which it's very hard to make up for those things without having expert help or enough time and energy to self-educate, right? So certainly, like if you feel like you want to design your own book cover, you can absolutely educate yourself on what's trending in your category, how to work with, various rights for images, how to use Adobe Photoshop or, or InDesign. Like you can learn how to do all those things. None of it is rocket science that you shouldn't be capable of, but are you going to take the time to learn how to do all those things? And ultimately, even if you do learn how to do all those things, does it make up for the experience of someone who's been designing book covers for 10 years, right? So, I do think it's hard sometimes to choose where you can, put your time and put your money, but talking to other authors can help you get a beat on it. Talking to someone like me can help you get a beat on it. It's one of the things that I do as a publishing consultant when clients or prospective clients approach us and they sign up for that initial call. That's like part of what I help them figure out is, what is their budget, and given their goals and given what they have to work with, where's the best place to start? Where's the best place to put that energy?
That's very fair. And I appreciate the nuance that you've simplified nuance for us. So it is very complicated and nuanced, but there's a way of understanding that, okay, that's okay that it's nuanced and we do need to get help. So thank you so much for your support. Olivera says she has no questions for you, but your hair is awesome. And also thanks to you for being here. And I just want to let everyone know before you go, because we are at the top of the hour, that Aly has a ready to publish checklist. That is awesome. I know there's tons of lead magnets. There's 35 million manuscripts rejected every year. There's tons of content out there that Aly knows your stuff. So I highly recommend you grab it, and it's free. So I posted in the chat and I will repost it for the replay later. And Aly, everyone, thank you so much for being here. I'll see y'all next week.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Jess. And good luck, you guys. Check out that checklist. It'll help answer Jess's question a little bit too.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, y'all. Bye. Have a good afternoon or evening.